My love. If you are hearing these words right now, then there is something I can no longer keep buried inside my heart. I tried to stay silent. I tried to convince myself that the truth would somehow disappear if I ignored it long enough. But every night, when the world becomes quiet and there is nobody left to impress, nobody left to fool, and nobody left to hide behind, one terrifying thought keeps returning to me again and again. What if I lose you before I tell you everything? What if one day you walk away, believing a lie about me, while the truth dies locked inside my chest forever? That is why I am speaking now. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. Because there is something happening behind the scenes that you were never supposed to discover. Something involving a third person. A person who smiled in front of you. A person who acted innocent. A person who pretended to care. But what you never realized is that while you were protecting your heart, they were studying it. While you were trusting them, they were collecting information. While you were focused on your future, they were quietly creating confusion around your name. And the most shocking part? They weren't only trying to influence you. They were using me. Yes. Using me. For a purpose I didn't fully understand until it was almost too late. I need you to listen carefully. Because the story I'm about to tell you isn't just about betrayal. It's about manipulation. It's about hidden motives. It's about secrets that remained invisible for far too long. And before this message ends, you will understand why I can no longer stay silent. Everything began with something so small that nobody would have noticed it. A simple conversation. A simple question. A simple moment. At first, it seemed harmless. The third party approached me casually. No pressure. No warning signs. Nothing suspicious. Just kindness. Or at least what looked like kindness. They asked about you. They talked about you. They seemed interested in your happiness. And because I never imagined someone could have a hidden agenda, I answered honestly. Looking back now, that was the first mistake. Because every answer I gave became a piece of a puzzle. A puzzle I didn't know they were building. Days passed. Then weeks. The questions continued. But they became more specific. More personal. More strategic. Suddenly they wanted to know your fears. Your dreams. Your insecurities. The things that made you smile. The things that made you cry. And without realizing it, I became the source of information they needed. Not because I wanted to hurt you. Not because I wanted to betray you. But because I genuinely believed they cared. I was wrong. Terribly wrong. One night everything changed. A conversation happened that I will never forget. Because during that conversation, a mask slipped. Only for a moment. Only for a few seconds. But it was enough. I heard something that wasn't meant for my ears. Something that revealed their true intentions. And when I heard it, my stomach dropped. The third party wasn't trying to help. They weren't trying to protect. They weren't trying to support. They were trying to control. Control the narrative. Control the emotions. control the connection between us. And suddenly every strange event from the past started making sense. The misunderstandings, the distance, the confusion, the awkward moments that appeared out of nowhere, the conversations that somehow got twisted, the messages that felt incomplete, the rumors, the assumptions, the tension. All of it. Every single piece. Connected. My love. You have no idea how painful that realization was. Because once I understood the truth, I was forced to face an even more frightening question. How much damage had already been done? How many decisions were influenced by information that was never accurate? How many times did you doubt yourself because someone was quietly shaping the situation behind the curtain? How many opportunities disappeared because of manipulation disguised as concern? I wish I could tell you the answer. But I can't. Because even now, there are pieces of the story I am still discovering. What I do know is this. The third party needed something. Something valuable. Something powerful. And strangely enough, that something was not money. It was not status. It was not success. It was attention. Emotional power. Influence. The ability to stand between two people and decide what each one sees. The ability to become the filter through which reality passes. That was their true goal. And once I understood that, everything became terrifyingly clear. Because a person who wants influence will often create problems just so they can pretend to solve them. A person who wants control will often create confusion just so they can become the source of clarity. A person who wants power will often manufacture distance between hearts. And that is exactly what happened. My love. There were moments when I wanted to tell you immediately. Moments when I almost picked up the phone. Moments when I nearly revealed everything. But fear stopped me. Not fear of the third party. Fear of losing you. Fear that after everything that happened, you would no longer trust my words. Fear that you would see me as part of the problem. Fear that you would believe I was involved. And perhaps that was exactly what the third party wanted. Because if they could make us doubt each other, they would never have to answer for their actions. Think about that. The strongest walls are not built with bricks. They are built with misunderstandings. And once those walls appear, even people who care deeply about each other struggle to see through them. For a long time, I stood trapped behind one of those walls. Watching. Regretting. Wondering. Hoping. Praying that somehow the truth would surface on its own. But it didn't. And every day that passed made the silence heavier. Until eventually I reached a breaking point. The moment I realized something I can never forget. Life is unpredictable. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. People leave. Circumstances change. Opportunities disappear. And if I remained silent any longer, there was a chance I would never get another opportunity to tell you this. That thought terrified me. Not because of what could happen to me. But because of what you might never know. You might never know how much I cared. You might never know how hard I fought internally. You might never know that despite every mistake, every delay, and every moment of fear, my feelings remained real. And that is why I am speaking now. Not as someone seeking sympathy. Not as someone asking for forgiveness. But as someone choosing honesty. For once. Completely. Honestly. Without masks. Without games. Without manipulation. There is another secret I need to reveal. And this one shocked me even more. The third party wasn't only collecting information. They were also spreading assumptions. Tiny assumptions. Small enough to seem harmless. But powerful enough to change perception. One suggestion here. One comment there. One carefully placed doubt. And over time those doubts grew. Because doubts are like seeds. Plant them in the right environment and they eventually become forests. Forests so dense that people forget where the truth is buried. That is what happened. And when I realized it, I finally understood why certain situations felt so unnatural. Why certain reactions seemed disconnected from reality. Why things that should have brought us closer somehow pushed us apart. Someone was quietly steering the direction. Not openly. Not dramatically. But strategically. Patiently. Carefully. And for a while, they succeeded. But every strategy has one weakness. Truth. Truth moves slowly. Sometimes painfully slowly. But eventually it arrives. And when it does, even the most carefully constructed illusion begins to collapse. That collapse has already started. Pieces are surfacing. Patterns are becoming visible. Questions are being asked. And the story that once seemed impossible to understand is finally beginning to make sense. My love. If there is one thing I want you to remember from everything I have said tonight, it is this. Not everyone who stands between two people belongs there. Some people are bridges. Others are barriers. Some people heal connections. Others quietly benefit from breaking them. Learn the difference. Because it can change your entire life. I don't know what tomorrow brings. I don't know how this story ends. I don't know what choices you will make after hearing these words. But I know this. The truth is finally free. No more hiding. No more pretending. No more silence. And if fate gives us another chance to understand each other without interference, without manipulation, and without the shadows of outside influence, then perhaps the future will look very different from the past. Perhaps the misunderstandings will lose their power. Perhaps the doubts will fade. Perhaps the walls will fall. And perhaps, for the first time in a very long time, we will see clearly what was hidden all along. Because the greatest revelation was never about the third party. The greatest revelation was realizing how much they feared the truth. And the reason they feared the truth is simple. Truth exposes everything. Truth exposes motives. Truth exposes manipulation. Truth exposes masks. Truth exposes intentions. And once exposed, those things can never return to the darkness they came from. So tonight, my love, I leave you with this final confession. I was used. I was manipulated. I was misled. But I am no longer silent. And no matter what happens next, there is one thing nobody can take away. The truth has finally been spoken. And sometimes, that single moment of truth is powerful enough to change everything. My love. After everything I confessed before, I thought the worst part of the story was over. I truly believed that once I understood how the third party had been using me, there would be nothing left to uncover. I was wrong. Because what happened next shook me more than anything that came before. And if I had not seen it with my own eyes, I would never have believed it. The truth is, the third party never expected me to wake up. They never expected me to question anything. They never expected me to notice the contradictions. And they certainly never expected me to start connecting the pieces. For a while, they were comfortable. Confident. Certain that their version of events would remain untouched. But something changed. A tiny detail. A detail so small that most people would have ignored it. Yet that detail opened a door. And behind that door was a secret they desperately wanted hidden. It happened on a day that seemed completely ordinary. Nothing unusual. Nothing dramatic. Just another normal day. But sometimes the biggest revelations arrive disguised as ordinary moments. I remember hearing something. A sentence. Just one sentence. At first it sounded insignificant. Yet something about it felt wrong. The words didn't match previous stories. The timeline didn't make sense. The explanation contradicted things I already knew. And for the first time, instead of accepting it, I questioned it. That question became another question. Then another. Then another. Until eventually I found myself standing in front of a mountain of inconsistencies. And suddenly a terrifying realization hit me. The third party had been telling different versions of the same story to different people. Different versions. Different narratives. Different realities. Each person received a customized version designed to create a specific reaction. Think about that for a moment. Imagine someone carefully adjusting every conversation depending on who they are speaking to. Imagine someone presenting one face to one person and a completely different face to another. Imagine someone becoming whatever they needed to become in order to stay in control. That was the reality I discovered. And the deeper I looked, the more shocking it became. My love. There were moments when I wished I had never learned any of this. Because ignorance feels peaceful. The truth does not. The truth demands action. The truth demands courage. The truth demands responsibility. And once you know the truth, you can never unknow it. One evening, something happened that changed everything. A conversation reached me indirectly. A conversation that was never meant to reach me. And inside that conversation was a statement that made my heart stop. The third party said something about us. Something revealing. Something dangerous. Not dangerous because it threatened us. Dangerous because it exposed their real fear. They weren't afraid of losing control over me. They weren't afraid of losing influence over others. They were afraid of one specific thing. They were afraid that you and I would eventually talk openly. Because open communication destroys manipulation. The moment two people compare notes, the illusion starts collapsing. The moment secrets are exposed to daylight, lies begin losing oxygen. The moment honest conversations happen, hidden agendas struggle to survive. And they knew that. Which is why they worked so hard to keep confusion alive. Looking back now, I can see it clearly. Every misunderstanding was useful to them. Every delay benefited them. Every doubt created opportunity for them. Every emotional distance strengthened their position. That realization made me sick. Not because I hated them, but because I hated how long I allowed it to continue. I kept asking myself the same question. Why didn't I notice sooner? Why didn't I trust my instincts? Why didn't I see the warning signs? The answer is painful. Because manipulation rarely looks like manipulation in the beginning. It often looks like concern. It often looks like friendship. It often looks like support. That is why so many people fall for it. Not because they are weak, but because they are human. And humans naturally want to believe the best in others. I wanted to believe the best. Perhaps you did too. But now the masks are slipping. And every mask that falls reveals something important. The first mask revealed insecurity. The second revealed jealousy. The third revealed fear. And beneath all of them was one uncomfortable truth. The third party was never as confident as they appeared. In fact, they were terrified. Terrified of being forgotten. Terrified of becoming irrelevant. Terrified of losing the influence they worked so hard to build. And fear can make people do strange things. Fear can turn simple situations into complicated ones. Fear can transform small problems into major conflicts. Fear can motivate actions that make no sense until you understand the insecurity driving them. Once I understood that, something inside me changed. The anger began fading. Not completely. But enough. Because I realized something important. The third party may have caused confusion. But I was responsible for what I did next. I could remain trapped in resentment. Or I could focus on truth. I chose truth. And that choice led to another discovery. A discovery I never expected. My love. The more I looked back, the more evidence I found that reality had been trying to reveal itself all along. Little clues. Tiny moments. Subtle signs. Things that seemed meaningless at the time. Yet together they painted a completely different picture. A picture that showed something remarkable. Despite every attempt to create distance. Despite every effort to create misunderstandings. Despite every obstacle. The connection never completely disappeared. Something always remained. A memory. A feeling. A thought. A question. A possibility. Something. And perhaps that is what frightened the third party most. Because genuine connections are difficult to destroy. You can delay them. You can confuse them. You can complicate them. But destroying them completely is another matter. That realization gave me hope. Not false hope. Not fantasy. Real hope. The kind of hope that comes from finally seeing things clearly. And clarity changes everything. When clarity arrives, excuses disappear. When clarity arrives, confusion weakens. When clarity arrives, priorities become obvious. That is exactly what happened to me. Suddenly I knew what mattered. Truth mattered. Honesty mattered. Courage mattered. And you mattered. More than my fear. More than my hesitation. More than my uncertainty. That is why I am continuing this confession now. Because there is still one final revelation left. The revelation that changed how I see everything. One night, after weeks of reflection, I asked myself a difficult question. What if the third party was never the real obstacle? What if the real obstacle was fear? My fear. Your fear. Everyone's fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of disappointment. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of being misunderstood. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The third party exploited fears that already existed. They didn't create every crack. They simply widened them. And once I understood that, something incredible happened. The story stopped being about them. It became about us. About choices. About honesty. About whether truth would finally be stronger than fear. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt free. Not because every problem disappeared. Not because every answer arrived. But because secrets no longer owned me. The burden was gone. The silence was gone. The hiding was gone. And when those things disappear, something beautiful becomes possible. A new beginning. Not necessarily with certainty. But with honesty. And honesty is stronger than certainty. Because certainty can be an illusion. Honesty cannot. My love. If these words reach your heart, remember this. The biggest victory was never exposing the third party. The biggest victory was refusing to become like them. Refusing to manipulate. Refusing to deceive. Refusing to control. Refusing to hide behind masks. That is the victory that matters. Because at the end of the day, every mask eventually falls. Every secret eventually surfaces. Every lie eventually weakens. And every truth eventually finds its voice. Mine has finally found its voice. That voice is speaking now. Louder than fear. Louder than doubt. Louder than manipulation. And it carries one final message. No matter how complicated the journey became. No matter how many misunderstandings appeared. No matter how many obstacles stood in the way. The truth survived. And now that it has emerged from the shadows, nothing will ever be the same again. The game is over. The masks are falling. The secrets are fading. And the truth is finally standing where it belongs. In the light.